And that's the thing is that we can have a division of assets and income and all, and it looks totally equitable, or 50-50. I mean, we've got a $2 million estate. I get a million, he gets a million. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's equal, because if I'm the one that keeps all of the real estate and the non-liquid assets or the non-spendable assets like retirement that I can't touch until after I'm 59 and a half, I'm not going to be able to live off of these resources, where my spouse, who might have taken all of the liquid assets, he can go about and do what he wants to do with that money today. And that
Welcome to the Divorce Discussions Podcast, where professionals share practical guidance to help you move through divorce with clarity and confidence. Let's get into the discussion.
For many women, divorce isn't just the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of taking full ownership of their financial life, and sometimes for the very first time, which can be extremely overwhelming. Not because they're not capable, but because they may not have had a full visibility, involvement, or confidence in their financial picture leading up to this moment. But here's the truth. This is also an opportunity to understand finances, protect what matters most, and step into a level of clarity and independence that can shape your future in powerful ways. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. Welcome to Divorce Discussions. I'm Angie Weber, the director of the Divorce Support Collective, where we seek to reimagine the process of divorce through collaboration and support. And I'm so excited to be joined by Donna Cates today. She's a financial strategist, wealth builder, and certified divorce financial analyst who helps women navigate life's most pivotal financial transitions with clarity and confidence. As the founder of Money Matters Wealth Solutions and Navigating Divorce, she specializes in guiding women through divorce, retirement, and wealth building with a strategic, personalized approach. Donna is a multi-time best-selling author of Divorce Decoded series, a sought-after speaker, and a trusted resource for women who want to protect their asset, make informed decisions, and step into financial independence. Through her work, she empowers women to take control of their financial future. And I am so excited for you to be with us today, Donna. So thank you.
I am delighted to be here as well. And I will have to say that hearing my own bio read out loud like that, I'm like going, ooh, okay, I am doing some good things out there. So yay.
Yeah, sometimes we need kind of that boost, right? Of like, oh, I have my stuff together a little bit. I have many conversations with professionals, obviously, in the divorce field, but also many other fields. And it's funny how sometimes I'll hear from other entrepreneurs of, am I doing this right? Like, should I just go get a 9 to 5? And am I the only one who feels this way? And I always remind them, like, no, we all go through that, which when we're talking about women in divorce as well, I'm sure there's lots of those questions of, what do I do? How do I do this right? Is this going to impact my future? So we'll be able to dive into those today.
Perfect.
Yes. So let's just kind of start at the beginning. Okay. You have a client, she's a woman, she's coming to you, she has no idea about her financial stuff because maybe her spouse is the one who really handled everything. So she's feeling overwhelmed. She could be emotional about the divorce. She might be frustrated, scared. Like, what's the first step for her to do to kind of gain some of that clarity and confidence?
Well, you just described everybody in a nutshell, because if you're not feeling any of those, trust me, you will in a moment. And the emotions and all the things that kind of roll around. But I will tell you, the biggest mistake that I find women making when they're in this position is just rushing to make decisions when they're in their emotions. So we literally have to kind of take a step back and hear my heart when I say, women, we must deal with our emotions. We are emotional beings, right? We can't just stuff them. But when you're navigating all of the decisions that you're going to have to be making in divorce, it's imperative that you separate the emotions from the logical business transaction of dissolving your divorce. That's the one big thing. And I was literally working with a client. I'll call her Sarah. This was just recently. She was so focused on keeping her house. She didn't want to take the kids out of the only home they'd known, their school system, all of the things. And it made sense to her emotionally because that's where she'd raised the kids. That's all they knew. But when we actually sat down and ran the numbers for her to see what it would look like, should she actually keep the house, she found out really quickly that she would be house rich and cash poor and would not have a life. So just taking that one step back and peeling the onion and saying, well, I know how we feel about this emotionally, but let's understand it from a financial position was really empowering to her. So, and I think that's the thing is a lot of women are making decisions that may feel safe for today, but I'm looking at it through a financial lens where we're looking at what's going to be happening not just today, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because we talk a lot on this podcast about how divorce is 80% emotional, 10% financial, and 10% legal. So you're right, the emotions take over, and especially something like a house, which is, just a physical structure, it can hold so much emotions because of the memories. So really seeing that clear picture. Now, do you find clients come to you after they've processed some of those emotions, or do you kind of have to help guide them or have other professionals come in to help them deal with those emotions before they make a financial mistake or maybe misstep that might affect them years down the road?
That's another great question because everybody's in a different place,
Mm.
and I find too that if the woman was the one that initiated the divorce, she's been thinking about this a minute. It's when someone says to their spouse, hey, I want a divorce, and they're blindsided. That's when they're playing catch up a lot of times. But I will tell you that I had a phone call with a woman this morning. She's planning her divorce right now.
Mm.
Her husband knows she wants a divorce, but she's literally getting her ducks in a row. And she told me unequivocally, I am emotionally okay. I am dealing with everything that I need to do. And it's rare for somebody to say that because normally they'll start talking and sharing their story and they get emotional. But she said, I'm beyond that point. And she actually is working with a divorce coach, which is another thing. You talk about working with other professionals. There are, a lot of professionals in the divorce space that can really help you through the process, having your counselor for the emotional baggage, having a divorce coach to keep you grounded and focused on moving forward, a financial professional to help you make informed financial decisions, and then lastly, the divorce attorney. That's usually the person that most people go to initially, but it could be the last person that you meet with because we need them to submit the agreement through the legal process. But we got to have that team and to know that emotions are okay. We're just not stuffing them, but we are kind of separating them from the decision making.
Yeah, and at the Divorce Support Collective, that's what we're all about is gathering together professionals so that we have a good collective for people going through a divorce to be able to really build their support team or their A team to help them through because it's not just getting a lawyer and everything's going to be figured out. There's the emotional piece and the financial piece and the legal piece, whether that's going through an attorney or it's going through a mediator or whatever that looks like for them. So I'm glad that you brought that up because again, we're so passionate as reminding people that you don't have to do this alone. And there is a multitude of professionals out there that can really help you through the process at whatever stage you're at. Now, of course, we talked already a lot about emotions, and that can lead to maybe some not great financial decisions, unless, of course, they have you as the expert to show them like, hey, this might not be the best choice in, 5-10 years. But are there any other big financial mistakes you see women going through divorce make and maybe could avoid after listening to this?
Yeah, I will tell you the biggest thing is not having clarity about the finances of the household.
Mm.
A lot of women have no clue what it's really costing them to live. They don't know whether or not there are life insurance policies in place for either herself or her husband. They don't understand just a lot of the moving pieces, and they're going into mediation or even just divorce negotiations without having the full picture. So I think that's the biggest thing is taking the space to literally get your head around what all the financial information is. And I've got, and I'm sure all professionals have, financial data gathering tools to help you because a lot of people say, oh, I didn't even know my husband had a pension. Don't know to ask for it, right? So we've got that laundry list of the data that we need for you to be gathering. And then we want to make sure that they really do understand their lifestyle expenses. I had someone come to me recently that she identified expenses, but she had nothing on that list of expenses about self-care like haircuts and manicures. And looking at her, I knew that she does take care of those things, right? But she
Sure.
didn't put that on her financial affidavit.
Mm.
So, really pulling the onion back and understanding what's it costing me to live the lifestyle. And then the next thing I would say is establishing priorities. The reality is we've got one household with either one or two incomes. We're getting ready to divide that into two. So obviously life is going to look a little different post divorce. But if you put some thought into what your true priorities are, and know what you're willing to give up, and versus what you're going to fight for, right? I think that helps. So gathering your financial data, understanding the cost of your lifestyle, and defining your priorities are three top things that I recommend.
Yeah, I love how you talked about that lifestyle piece because I think, we've done a few other interviews with financial people, and I don't know if that's gotten brought up before because when people think of the finances, they usually think of, okay, where are we living and can we cover the cost of that? Maybe health insurance, car insurance, those types of things. But you're right. Like, what will it take to maintain a similar, hopefully, lifestyle that you have right now, but also including that self-care, which, of course, can help with the emotional piece too, because if you don't have an outlet for self-care, whether it's going to get your hair done or another activity like yoga, for example, because I know me personally, I do not like going and getting my hair done whatsoever. So it can look different for everyone, but having those little things in there is super important. And I think those are all three really great points. One thing that I wanted to kind of ask you as far as the financial goes too, is that not everyone who gets divorced has kids. However, there's a good majority that do. So how do we have to look at it differently if there's children involved versus if there's not children involved?
Very good question. So, there's a couple of things to consider here. Number one, the ages of the children, whether or not they're minors, and that age, varies from one state to the next. I think most states are 18 or some are 19. But, when you have children involved, the court is always going to be making decisions based on the best interest of the children. So this is where I say that, women and their husbands, they have to pull up their big girl britches or big boy britches and say, we got to do what's best for the kids,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want them to suffer. So I think identifying you know, what their expenses are. If they're young kids, you're going to be spending money on diapers and daycare and stuff. Okay, now those may go away, but they're going to be replaced by ballet and sports and all of the other things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Private schooling versus public school. I had one client that said, my husband it refuses to put our daughter in public school, so I'm going to make him pay for the private school. Well, of
Sure.
course, you could negotiate that, but nobody's going to make that happen, right? But yeah, I think when there are children involved, we really have to make a good estimate of what it's costing to raise them, knowing that child support is never going to cover all of the expenses of raising a child. I mean, the child support is designed to put a roof over their head, food in their belly, and take care of them medically. All the extra stuff is things that you're going to have to negotiate. And I will tell you, one of the best ways that I have found that works for most couples, especially if there's a big disparity in income, like a woman that I met with last week, she only earns 27% of the household income. Her husband earns the rest. So rather than dividing those extracurricular activities 50-50, it was agreed that she would cover 25% and he would cover 75% just because of the disparity in their income. Now, most people would just automatically assume, if we're going to split the cost, it's going to be 50-50. But that made sense, and I think we just kind of have to get creative with how we handle those things.
Yeah, now here leads into another question, Donna. So that sounds amazing, and I'm so glad that that couple was able to come to an agreement on that. There might be some listeners saying, "Yeah, I don't earn as much as my soon-to-be ex, but they are not going to agree to that type of thing." So, do you have any recommendations if it's a more high conflict divorce when they can't seem to agree on the financial pieces of it?
I will tell you engaging with a CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, can be really helpful in that situation because when somebody's already got a line in the sand, they're saying, I'm not going to do X or you're not going to get any of my retirement assets or what have you. I think a lot of times they're operating from a fear of losing power, having to give up the stuff that they worked so hard for. There's a lot of emotions behind that. But if we can do the financial data analysis and show the spouse that's resistant to change, that, hey, even if he agrees to do X, Y, and Z, he's still going to be financially okay. And that's typically how the numbers come out, not all of the time. I mean, if a couple comes to us and they're already living beyond their means, there's not much we can do for them. But if there's discretionary cash flow and there are assets, the way that we divide them can be, weighted so that, yeah, he's given stuff up, but he's not going to go to the poorhouse. And if he can see that graphically and in charts and numbers, that is sometimes helpful.
Gotcha. And you bring up a really great point that I wanted to get to as well, because you just mentioned it, working with a certified divorce financial analyst or a CDFA. But for the listeners who are like, well, why can't I just go to my financial planner that we have? What is the biggest difference of using a CDFA and just a normal financial planner?
Okay, good question again. So, financial advisors, we literally, the work that we're doing as a financial advisor, financial planner, is to help you build wealth over time. So that's our goal. In a planning situation, we're saying, what do you have now? What are you earning? What are you spending? Where do you want to end up? And when do you want to be there? And then we model and create investment recommendations and strategies to achieve that. Now, the difference between a CDFA and a traditional financial advisor is that the CDFA is trained in the legal sandbox. We understand how all of the decisions that are made in that legal process can impact somebody. So we're looking at not just how we're going to divide everything, but literally understanding how we're going to protect your financial future. And that's the big distinction. We're not looking at building at this point. We're looking at protecting what you have and making sure that you're not leaving anything on the table that is rightfully yours and your kids so that you're not starting over from scratch. So that's a lens that most financial advisors or financial planners are not trained in.
Thank you for that clarification because again, I feel like with a lot in divorce too, especially when people are just entering this journey and trying to navigate it, there's so many different acronyms and letters and things thrown at them. So I really thank you for that clear explanation of why a CDFA is so important in this process, not just to help you with your money, but to really see it from that other lens so that you can make fair decisions, which I know you're all about. You love to help women with their fair settlement, you say. What does that look like? Maybe not just today, but you kind of mentioned it before. You want to look 5, 10, 20 years down the road to make sure that this is still going to be the best decision.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is that we can have a division of assets and income and all, and it looks totally equitable, or 50-50. I mean, we've got a $2 million estate. I get a million, he gets a million. that doesn't necessarily mean that it's equal, because if I'm the one that keeps all of the real estate and the non-liquid assets or the non-spendable assets like retirement that I can't touch until after I'm 59 and a half, I'm not going to be able to live off of these resources, where my spouse, who might have taken all of the liquid assets, he can go about and do what he wants to do with that money today. So I think, understanding the financial implication, and what we're looking at is, what are the tax implications? What are the growth opportunities? Um, when am I going to be able to access money? How liquid is it? Right now, I've got several clients that are dealing with cryptocurrency.
Mm,
They're all and they're having a very difficult time defining what those are and what the values are, much less getting any agreement between the two of them. But I think, that's huge, because just because it says 50-50 and you've got the same numbers at the bottom of the page doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to support your lifestyle. So
mm.
that's what we're looking at, is what are you receiving that's going to support, versus just being a fair settlement.
Yeah. Okay, again, great explanation that I think just shine a ton of light for a lot of our listeners here. Now, I want to go back to kind of the very beginning when we were talking about those three priorities that, or those three steps that they should really be looking at as far as starting this process out. And I'm just a little nervous. Maybe there's a listener who's like, Donna, I don't even know how to get into the accounts. I don't even know how to start that process because I've never had to do the financials before. Is there some kind of encouragement or strategy you can give to that listener so that they don't feel like all of this is too overwhelming, or that they can't go down this path working with the CDFA because of their being overwhelmed?
Absolutely. And that's a very normal feeling. And and I'm kind of surprised, um, in this day and age, that there are so many women that take a back seat to the money stuff. And it's not a criticism. It's, all of our plates are too full. And if somebody else wants to handle that, we're like, okay, yeah, you have it. I know where to find you if I need something, right? But that puts us at a disadvantage, because we're just kind of out here and we don't know. And the for me, the reason I get on my soapbox with this is that it could be divorce, but also your spouse could die tomorrow. And if
Mhm.
he dies and you don't have any financial information, what are you going to do? You're in major grief. Now you got to deal with figuring everything out. But the encouragement that I would give you is, in divorce, we professionals like me are going to advise you on what information you need to be gathering. So we kind of start with promoting you as a private investigator in your own home. Where do we go to find this information? What can we learn from last year's tax return? Documents that are just easily available. Now, since everything's done electronically now, if I wanted to see what my husband's pay stub looked like, I would have to ask him for it, because they don't even send them to us anymore, right? But we're going to kind of coach you on what you should be able to get your hands on versus what you can't. And here's the thing: is with my checklist, I say, if you've got it and you know about it, check it off. We're not going to look at that again. We're going to look at what we don't have. Now that gives us something to focus on and say, okay, am I able to get that? Am I able to have an adult conversation with my spouse and encourage him to share that information with me because it's the right thing to do? Or am I going to need to ask my attorney to get that information for me? So if your husband is not cooperative, not willing to share information with you, the one thing that I ask people to use to appeal to their sense of reason is that if they're not willing to share the information, that means that both yours and his attorney bills are going to go up. So
Yeah.
you're spending more money on attorneys when you could easily agree to share that information without attorneys, right? You're saving yourself money. And it's not an if, it's a when you're going to have to share it. So, if you can appeal to their economic sense, we might get a little bit more cooperation. But yeah, so don't fret if you feel like you're not in the know. We can get you where you need to be and get you, at least to understanding what you don't know that you need to be asking about.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And it's funny because I'm the one who does all of our finances. And so I'm always the one who jokes with my husband, like, if I die, good luck. I don't know how you're going to know how to pay anything, but you'll figure it out. Okay, I love that. Thank you so much for just giving again that little of encouragement. Now, we talked a lot about how this is at kind of the very beginning. It's the best case scenario if they come and talk to you at the beginning before they get involved with a bunch of other stuff so that they can see that financial picture clearly. But is there really ever a time where it's too late to come talk to a CDFA about this stuff?
It's funny you should ask that because I have a referral from an attorney. She emailed me and said, I have a client who's going to be getting a lot in assets. She needs a new financial advisor because she doesn't want to work with the old financial advisor because her husband was staying there. So, and I said, I'm happy to do the way the attorney approached it was that the divorce wasn't finalized yet, and I would be guiding her on making informed decisions as she navigated the divorce. The reality is when the woman met with me, her divorce had been finalized that day.
Mm.
So literally, the attorney, I know, right? And I'm going, and that it was a hot mess because she ended up with a ton of real estate
Mm.
that she was going to have refinanced into her name, and she could not qualify because she did not have income.
Mm.
So it was just a hot mess to begin with. But no, it's really never too late as long as you are still negotiating. Once the papers are signed, there's no do-over. And that's one of the reasons I say people need to work with someone like myself because once it's signed, you don't get a second chance. You don't get to go back and renegotiate that. So you might be able to do that with child support amounts or alimony amounts if somebody loses a job or something. But all of the big decisions that are being made are irrevocable. So it never really too late. But I will tell you, the sooner you can get someone like me involved, the less stress there's going to be, and the more clarity you will likely have.
Yeah, I love that. Now, of course, Donna, they can contact you and they can learn more about you being a CDFA, but your other resource that you have for women going through divorce is your book. So let's talk
Right.
a little bit about your book, A Woman's Guide to Financial Security and Fair Settlement. Share a little bit more with our listeners of why they'd want to pick that up and what they can gain from it.
Okay, it's an awesome book, if I have to say so myself, because what it does is breaks down all of the pieces of your financial well-being that you're going to have to address as you go through divorce. And in this, we're giving explanations about what the court might decide for you or how attorneys might advise you. But we're also sharing client stories, real client examples of decisions that were made, things that they wish they had done differently, all of the things. Yeah. And the goal of the book is to literally help you make informed decisions versus just emotional decisions. But we walk through everything from, do I keep the house or don't I? Am I going to even be able to get approved for a mortgage? Am I going to qualify for alimony? And how long is child support going to last? Ooh, I've got a special needs kid. Am I going to get, the child support for a longer amount of time? All of those things. So it's very comprehensive. And another thing I'll tell you that my first book was Divorce Decoded.
Yeah.
And that one is written from the perspective of several different professionals. So everybody in that book is a professional that deals with the divorce work. But it could be a counselor that talks about emotional issues. It could be and telling her own story. It could be a divorce coach, all of the different professionals and educating you literally to help you avoid making the bad decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And where can they find that book to grab it up?
Okay, they're both available through my website and
Okay.
they're also available on Amazon.
Awesome. Thank you. And I love how, I mean, I think from the professional perspective, it's great. And I love the Women's Guide to Financial Security and Fair Settlement, because I feel like that is really written to the point where someone who's going through this doesn't have to feel so alone, doesn't think that they're the only one going through it or the only one dealing with these emotions, because of course, every divorce is so uniquely and different. And so I love that perspective to just give a little bit more empowerment and encouragement to those women who are listening. So I'm going to have the link to Donna's website in our show notes. So you're going to want to go and check that out so you can grab up those books. But as we wind down here, Donna, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners about their finances or just making it through divorce?
I will say it's, pull up your big girl britches and put yourself in the driver's seat. There's no reason to be a passenger, and know that there are people that can support you and help you get grounded. And you don't have to be an expert in all this money stuff, but you do want to have the support. So that's, my words of encouragement are you will get through this. And once you are through it, now you're in a position to literally rebuild the life that you want. So we just have to kind of stay in the moment and look forward versus just listening in the rearview mirror and the shoulda, woulda, couldas and all of that. So we got to be forward focused and looking at building a better yourself.
Yes, and you want to talk to a CDFA like Donna so that you don't have to be thinking about the what ifs or looking in the rearview mirror when it comes to your financial decisions through divorce. So thank you so much, Donna, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Again, listeners, head to the show notes. You're going to be able to get connected, check out her books, connect with her on multiple different areas. And of course, we'll see you on the next discussion.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce Discussions podcast. If this was helpful, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next conversation. Visit thedivorcesupportcollective.com to explore resources and connect with our professionals. Until the next discussion, remember, you don't have to navigate this alone.